The strange horse had been ignored in the corral for days, as if no one even wanted to get close to him. But when the rancher's daughter walked in, the animal lifted his head in a way that made everyone hold their breath. And when she touched the mark hidden beneath the mud, the horse trembled as if he had finally recognized someone. The entire ranch fell silent. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. That horse is trouble. Nobody's gonna buy him, the old ranch hand said, shaking his head as he leaned against the wooden fence. The early morning sun spilled across Pinewood Ranch as Emma Foster stepped out of her dusty blue pickup truck. She breathed in the familiar scent of hay, horses, and Montana soil that she had missed during her 3 years away at veterinary school in California. The mountains in the distance stood tall against the clear sky, unchanged since her childhood, unlike everything else. Emma pulled her brown hair into a ponytail and grabbed her worn leather bag from the passenger seat. She had arrived late last night, finding her father asleep in his recliner with bills scattered across the coffee table. She hadn't wanted to wake him with questions about how bad the ranch's money problems really were. "Good morning, Miguel," Emma called out, walking toward the stable manager who had worked at Pinewood Ranch for 30 years. Miguel Rodriguez turned with surprise on his weathered face. His eyes crinkled with joy as he recognized her. "Emma, you're back early. Your father said you wouldn't be home until next month." Emma hugged the man who had taught her to ride her first pony when she was 5 years old. "I finished my exams early," she said, not mentioning the worried phone calls from her father that had convinced her to come home before graduation. "How have things been around here?" Miguel's smile faded slightly. "Your father works hard, but times are tough. The bank people come by more often now." Emma nodded, her chest tightening. The ranch had been in her family for 3 generations. Losing it would break her father's heart. "I want to see the horses," she said, changing the subject. "Dad said you have 20 now?" "Only 17, Miguel corrected. "We had to sell the 3 mares last month." They walked together past the main stable where familiar horse faces poked out from stalls. Emma greeted each one by name, offering gentle pats to their noses. The morning stable sounds horses shuffling, the soft nicker of greetings, pitchforks and hay made her feel like she was truly home. That's when she noticed the lone horse in the corner pen, separate from the others. He stood with his head down, his brown coat dull and dirty. He was thin, with ribs showing beneath his hide and strange marks she couldn't quite see clearly from a distance. "Who's that?" Emma asked, stopping to look at the solitary animal. Miguel frowned. "That one's strange, Emma. Found him wandering near Wolf Creek last month. Won't let anyone touch him. Doesn't eat much. Nobody wants him." "You've tried to sell him?" Emma walked closer to the pen. 3 weekends in a row at the auction. Everyone walks away. Too skinny, too wild, too many marks on him. Miguel shook his head. "Your father says if nobody buys him this weekend, we might have to call the rescue shelter." Emma leaned against the fence, studying the horse. "What's wrong with him? Is he sick?" "Not sick, just..." Miguel searched for the right word. "Broken, maybe. Like something bad happened to him. He runs from everyone. Be careful if you go in there." Emma opened the gate slowly. The horse had not looked up or acknowledged their presence, something unusual for most horses. She stepped into the pen, her boots quiet on the dirt. "Hey there," she said softly. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." To her surprise and Miguel's, the horse lifted his head. For the first time in weeks, according to Miguel's shocked expression, the animal showed interest in a human. His eyes, though tired, focused on Emma. "Well, look at that," Miguel whispered from behind the fence. "He's never done that before." Emma took another step forward. The horse didn't back away as she expected. Instead, he watched her cautiously. There was something in his gaze that felt familiar to Emma, though she couldn't explain why. "How long have you been trying to sell him?" she asked Miguel without taking her eyes off the horse. 3 weeks now. Your father says we can't afford to feed horses nobody wants." Emma nodded sadly. The financial reality of ranch life was something she understood, even if she didn't like it. Still, she felt drawn to this animal in a way she couldn't explain. "Has my dad spent much time with him?" "No," Miguel answered. "He's been too busy with the bank meetings and trying to find investors. I'm not sure he's even seen this one up close." Emma moved slowly toward the horse, talking in a low, gentle voice. "It's okay, boy. You're safe here." The horse's ears twitched forward, listening. Most abandoned horses showed fear or aggression, but this one seemed different, cautious but not terrified. "What's his name?" Emma asked. Miguel shrugged. "No name. Just the brown horse, or that strange one nobody wants." Emma frowned. A horse without a name was a horse without a connection. "Everyone deserves a name," she said, more to herself than to Miguel. She was now just 10 feet away from the horse, close enough to see the unusual marks on his hide. Some looked like old scars, others like rope burns. "Someone hurt you, didn't they?" she said quietly. The horse blinked, as if understanding her words. "Emma, be careful," Miguel warned. "He doesn't trust people." "I don't blame him," Emma replied, thinking about the marks on his body. She stopped moving forward and simply stood still, letting the horse decide what happened next. After a full minute of stillness, the horse took one hesitant step toward her, something Miguel later said he hadn't done for any human since arriving at the ranch. "I'll be damned," Miguel muttered. Emma smiled. "He just needs time." Just then, her father's voice called from the main house. "Emma, there you are." Robert Foster walked toward the stables, his gait showing the slight limp from an old rodeo injury. His face looked more lined than Emma remembered, his once dark hair now mostly gray, but his smile was warm as he approached his daughter. "I see you found the stables before you even unpacked," he said, hugging her tightly. "Some things never change," Emma replied, returning his embrace. "I was just meeting your newest resident." Robert glanced at the brown horse, who had immediately lowered his head again when more people arrived. "That one? We've been trying to sell him for weeks. Nobody's interested." "He seems interested in Emma," Miguel commented. "First time he's looked at anybody." Robert raised his eyebrows. "Really? Well, you always did have a way with the troubled ones." His face grew serious. "But Emma, we can't keep horses that don't earn their keep anymore. The ranch is in trouble," Emma finished for him. "I know, Dad. You've told me on the phone." Robert's shoulders slumped slightly. "I didn't want to bring you home to this mess. You should be celebrating your graduation, not worrying about old Pinewood's money problems." Emma placed a hand on her father's arm. "This is my home too. We'll figure it out together." Robert nodded, though the worry remained in his eyes. "Come on up to the house. Sarah made breakfast, and we need to talk about some things." As Emma followed her father, she glanced back at the strange horse. He had raised his head again and was watching her leave. Something about his gaze stayed with her as they walked to the house, a connection she couldn't explain, but felt deeply. "I'll be back later," she whispered to the horse, too quietly for anyone else to hear. In the kitchen, Sarah, their longtime housekeeper, had prepared a spread of pancakes, eggs, and bacon. The smell reminded Emma of Sunday mornings throughout her childhood. "Look who's all grown up and a doctor now," Sarah exclaimed, pulling Emma into a hug that smelled of maple syrup and coffee. "Not officially a doctor until graduation next month," Emma corrected with a smile. They sat at the worn wooden table that had been in the Foster family for generations. Robert stirred his coffee slowly, avoiding Emma's eyes. "Dad, just tell me how bad it is," Emma said directly. "How close are we to losing the ranch?" Robert sighed. 3 months behind on payments. Bank says they'll foreclose if we can't get current by the end of next month." Emma felt her stomach tighten. "How much do we need?" $25,000, Robert said, the number hanging heavy in the air between them. Emma's mind raced. It might as well have been $1 million they didn't have it. "What about the horse auction this weekend? How many are you selling?" 5 horses, but they'll bring in 8,000 at most." Robert shook his head. "It's not enough." Emma thought about the lonely brown horse in the pen, the one nobody wanted. He would bring nothing at auction, yet something about him called to her, made her feel he was important somehow. "I'm going to help with the horses," Emma said firmly. "And we'll find a way to save Pinewood. I promise." Robert attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your mother always said you had more determination than sense." Emma stood up and kissed her father's cheek. "And she also said that Foster determination could move mountains." As she headed back toward the stables, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the strange horse with the sad eyes. She didn't know why, but she felt certain that horse was going to matter more than anyone at Pinewood Ranch realized. Emma hurried back to the stables, ignoring the plates Sarah was still clearing from the breakfast table. Something about that horse pulled at her. It wasn't just pity. It was a feeling deep in her chest that she couldn't explain. When she reached the pen, the brown horse was standing in the same spot, but his head lifted immediately as she approached. Miguel was spreading fresh hay in a nearby stall and noticed her return. "Back so soon?" he asked with a small smile. "That one got your attention, huh?" Emma nodded, opening the gate slowly. "There's something about him. I can't explain it." This time she brought a brush and a small bucket of water. The horse needed cleaning, and maybe that would reveal more about his condition. As she entered the pen, she spoke in the same soft voice she'd used earlier. "Hey there, I'm back. Just going to help you get cleaned up a bit." Miguel watched carefully from outside the fence. "You sure about this, Emma? He hasn't let anyone get close enough to brush him." "He'll let me," Emma said with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. The horse watched her approach, ears forward with interest rather than pinned back in fear. Emma moved slowly, letting him see the brush in her hand. "This will feel good, I promise. Just want to get some of this dirt off you." To Miguel's amazement, the horse didn't back away when Emma came within arm's reach. She extended her hand, palm flat, letting him smell her. The horse's nostrils flared slightly as he took in her scent. "That's it," she encouraged. "Remember, I'm a friend." After a moment of hesitation, she gently touched his neck. The horse flinched, but didn't pull away. Slowly, Emma began to brush his dirty coat, starting at the neck where horses often enjoy being groomed. Clumps of mud and dirt fell away with each stroke. "Look how filthy you are," Emma said softly. "Where have you been all this time?" Miguel shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like it. We've been trying to brush him for weeks." As Emma worked, she noticed the horse leaning slightly into her brush strokes. Underneath the dirt, his coat was a deep reddish brown, not the dull brown it had appeared. She worked carefully around the marks and scars, not wanting to cause any pain. Then, as she brushed a particularly thick patch of mud on his neck, something caught her eye. A small patch of white appeared underneath the dirt. Emma paused, then used the wet cloth from her bucket to gently clean the area. Her hands began to tremble as a small star-shaped white mark emerged. "Miguel," she whispered, her voice suddenly tight. "Miguel, come here." The stable manager approached cautiously, not wanting to spook the horse. "What is it?" Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "This mark. Look at this mark." Miguel peered at the small white star on the horse's neck, then looked at Emma's face, confused by her reaction. "It's just a white marking. Many horses have—" "No," Emma interrupted, her voice shaking. "This isn't just any mark. This is Comet's mark." Miguel's eyes widened. "Comet? Your mother's horse? The one that was lost in the flood 3 years ago?" Emma nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She moved quickly to the horse's left rear leg, brushing away more dirt to reveal a distinctive curved scar that she knew would be there. "Dad!" she shouted toward the house. "Dad, come quick!" The horse, Comet, shifted nervously at her sudden loud voice, but didn't pull away. Emma immediately softened her tone. "It's okay, Comet. It's okay. It's me, Emma. You're home." At the name Comet, the horse's ears perked up. Emma felt tears streaming down her face now. "You remember, don't you? You remember your name?" Robert appeared at the stable entrance, walking quickly despite his limp. "Emma? What's wrong?" "Dad," she called, her voice breaking with emotion. "Dad, it's Comet. The horse nobody wants. It's Comet." Robert stopped in his tracks, staring at the thin, scarred horse in the pen. "That's not possible. Comet was lost in the flood. We searched for weeks." "Look," Emma insisted, pointing to the star-shaped mark she'd uncovered. "Look at his neck and the scar on his left hind leg. It's him, Dad." Robert approached the fence slowly, his face pale. Miguel opened the gate to let him in, and for once, Robert didn't hesitate to enter a pen with a nervous horse. "Be careful, sir," Miguel warned. "He doesn't like men getting too close." But as Robert approached, the horse watched him intently. Emma held her breath. Comet had always loved her father almost as much as he'd loved her mother. "Comet?" Robert said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Old boy, is that really you?" The horse took a tentative step toward Robert, stretching his neck forward. "I can't believe it," Robert whispered. He reached out a trembling hand. For a moment the horse hesitated, then gently pressed his nose into Robert's palm. Robert's composure crumbled. His shoulders began to shake as tears filled his eyes. Emma had not seen her father cry since her mother's funeral 5 years ago. "Where have you been, old friend?" he asked the horse, his voice breaking. "We thought you were gone forever." Emma moved beside her father, placing a hand on his arm. Together, they stood with the horse they'd believed was dead, both too overwhelmed to speak. Miguel watched from outside the pen, his own eyes damp. "It's a miracle," he said quietly. "After 3 years, it's a miracle." After a few minutes, Robert wiped his eyes and turned to Miguel. "Call Dr. Wilson. I want him to examine Comet right away." Miguel nodded and hurried off toward the office phone. Emma continued brushing away the dirt from Comet's coat, revealing more of the deep chestnut color she remembered. "He's so thin, Dad. And these marks. Someone hurt him." Robert's face hardened as he looked at the scars and rope burns. "Someone will answer for this." "But how did he get here?" Emma wondered aloud. "How did he find his way back to Pinewood after 3 years?" Robert shook his head. "Horses have amazing instincts for finding home. Remember that story about the horse in Wyoming that traveled 200 miles to return to its first owner? I remember Mom used to say Comet was the smartest horse she'd ever known," Emma said softly. At the mention of Catherine, Robert's face softened. She loved this horse more than any other. Raised him from a foal. He paused, looking at the star mark Emma had uncovered. She named him Comet because of that mark, said it looked like a shooting star that had landed on his neck to grant wishes. Emma smiled through her tears. "I remember." They stood in silence for a moment, both thinking of Catherine and how she would have reacted to Comet's miraculous return. "Mom would say this was meant to be," Emma finally said. "She'd say Comet came back when we needed him most." Robert nodded, his gaze fixed on the horse. "Your mother always believed everything happened for a reason." Dr. Wilson arrived 45 minutes later. The local veterinarian had been taking care of Pinewood's horses for over 20 years. He listened in astonishment as Robert and Emma explained that the abandoned horse was actually Comet. "Well, I'll be," Dr. Wilson said, examining the star mark and the scar. "It does appear to be him. Let's give him a proper exam and see what he's been through." The examination took over an hour. Comet remained surprisingly calm with Emma at his head, stroking his face and talking softly to him. Dr. Wilson found evidence of malnourishment, several poorly healed injuries, and signs that the horse had been kept in confined spaces. "Someone worked this horse hard and didn't take care of him," the vet concluded, putting away his equipment. "The good news is, nothing seems permanently damaged. With proper care, good feed, and time, he should recover physically." "And mentally?" Emma asked, concerned about Comet's fear reactions. Dr. Wilson sighed. "That's harder to predict. Horses don't forget trauma easily, but he clearly remembers you both in a positive way. That's a very good sign." After the vet left, Emma and Robert moved Comet from the isolation pen to a comfortable stall in the main stable. Emma prepared a special feed mix with extra nutrients to help him gain weight. She added a thick layer of fresh bedding to the stall and made sure his water bucket was full. "I'll sleep in the stable tonight," she told her father. "I want to make sure he settles in okay." Robert didn't argue. He understood. "I'll bring you some blankets." That evening, as the sun set over Pinewood Ranch, Emma sat on a stool outside Comet's stall, watching him eat small amounts of the special feed she'd prepared. Each time he looked up, she spoke to him gently, reminding him of his life before he disappeared. "Remember how you used to follow Mom around like a puppy?" she said softly. "And how you'd steal apples from the kitchen window when Sarah wasn't looking?" Comet's ears twitched at her voice. Robert returned with blankets and a thermos of hot coffee. He handed them to Emma, then stood watching Comet for a long moment. "Finding him feels like getting a small piece of your mother back," he said quietly. Emma nodded. "I know. I've been holding on to this ranch because it was hers, because she loved it so much." Robert's voice was thick with emotion. "But lately, I've been thinking maybe it's time to let go." "Dad, no," Emma protested. "Pinewood has been in the family for generations." Robert sighed heavily. "Sometimes holding on costs more than letting go, Emma. The money problems are worse than I've told you." Emma stood up, determination in her face. "And now Comet's home. Don't you see? This means something. We can't give up now." Robert looked at his daughter, seeing Catherine's stubbornness in her expression. "One miracle doesn't solve $25,000 of debt," he said gently. "No," Emma agreed, "but it gives us a reason to keep fighting." Later that night, Emma made a bed of hay bales near Comet's stall. As she settled in, she heard the soft sounds of the horse moving around, then the gentle nicker she remembered from years ago. Comet was talking to her, the way he used to when she visited the stables late at night. "I missed you too," she whispered into the darkness. Outside, clouds gathered on the horizon. A spring storm was coming to Montana, and Emma fell asleep to the distant rumble of thunder, wondering where Comet had been all this time, and how he had found his way home. The distant thunder grew into a full storm during the night. Emma woke to the sound of rain hitting the stable roof and the nervous shuffling of horses in their stalls. She sat up quickly from her makeshift bed of hay bales, immediately looking toward Comet. The horse was standing alert in his stall, ears forward, eyes wide. His body trembled slightly with each crack of thunder. "It's okay," Emma said softly, moving to his stall door. "It's just a storm. You're safe here." Comet's eyes found her in the dim light of the stable's emergency lantern. He seemed to relax slightly at the sound of her voice, but still jumped when another rumble of thunder shook the building. "Storms scared you ever since you were a foal," Emma remembered aloud. "Mom used to sit with you during bad weather." She unlatched the stall door and slipped inside, moving slowly to stand beside him. Comet shifted but didn't move away. Emma gently placed her hand on his neck, feeling his racing pulse gradually slow under her touch. They stayed that way until morning, Emma talking softly whenever the thunder made Comet nervous. As dawn broke, the storm passed, leaving behind puddles in the ranch yard and a clean, fresh smell in the air. Miguel arrived early, surprised to find Emma already awake and mixing feed. "You really did sleep here," he said, helping her carry water buckets. Emma nodded. The storm scared him. "Remember how my mom would sit with him during thunderstorms?" Miguel smiled. "I remember. Catherine had a special way with this horse." His smile faded as he looked more closely at Comet in the morning light. "Those marks look worse than I thought." Emma had been examining them too. Now that Comet was clean, the evidence of his ordeal was clearer. Scars crossed his flanks. A ring of rough skin around each fetlock told of time spent in restraints. His back showed signs of an ill-fitting saddle used for too long without rest. "Someone hurt him badly," Emma said, her voice tight with anger. "These aren't accidents, Miguel." She spent the morning carefully documenting each mark and injury, taking photos with her phone and making notes in a small notebook. When Sarah brought lunch to the stable, Emma was still working, now preparing a special mix of feed with added vitamins and minerals. "Your father says you haven't been up to the house all day," Sarah said, placing a sandwich and apple on a hay bale. "I need to establish a routine with Comet," Emma explained. "He needs to gain at least 100 pounds, but we have to do it slowly so we don't make him sick." Sarah looked at the thin horse. "Poor thing. What happened to him out there?" Emma shook her head. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Over the next 3 days, Emma established a careful feeding schedule, 5 small meals throughout the day, each slightly larger than the last. She spent hours simply sitting in Comet's stall, sometimes reading aloud from her veterinary textbooks, sometimes just talking about memories from before he disappeared. On the 4th morning, Robert came to the stable to check on Emma and Comet. "You look tired," he told his daughter. "You need to sleep in a real bed, not on hay bales." "I'm fine," Emma insisted. "Comet's making progress. He's gained a little weight already." Robert studied the horse. "He does look better, less haunted." Just then, the sound of a truck engine roared to life outside the stable. Comet's reaction was immediate and violent. He reared up, eyes wild with fear, then retreated to the corner of his stall, trembling uncontrollably. "Whoa!" Robert exclaimed, backing away from the panicked horse. Emma rushed to Comet, speaking in a calm, steady voice. "It's okay. You're safe. Nothing is going to hurt you." It took nearly 20 minutes for Comet to calm down. The truck, one of the ranch hands leaving to pick up supplies, was long gone, but Comet still trembled. "What was that about?" Robert asked, genuinely confused. Emma looked her father straight in the eyes. "That's fear, Dad. Deep fear from bad experiences. Comet is terrified of truck engines." Later that afternoon, Emma watched from Comet's stall as her father approached wearing his everyday cowboy hat. Comet immediately backed away, ears pinned flat against his head, nostrils flared. "Dad, take your hat off," Emma called out. Robert removed his hat, looking puzzled. Almost instantly, Comet relaxed. "That's interesting," Robert said, looking at his hat. "Why would he be afraid of hats?" Emma stepped out of the stall, closing the door behind her. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." They walked outside the stable, where Emma turned to face her father directly. "I don't think Comet got lost in the flood," she said firmly. "I think someone took him." Robert frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Emma. Who would steal our horse?" "I don't know yet, but look at the evidence." Emma pulled out her phone, showing her father the photos she'd taken of Comet's injuries. "These marks are from ropes tied too tight. These are from spurs used cruelly, and these marks along his back, from a saddle that didn't fit, used for hours without breaks." Robert studied the photos, his expression darkening. "And now he's terrified of truck engines and men in cowboy hats," Emma continued. "Dad, someone stole Comet, hurt him, and used him hard. He didn't just wander away and survive in the wild for 3 years." Robert handed the phone back to Emma, his face troubled. "It's hard to believe someone would do that. But you're right. These injuries tell a story." "I'm going to find out what happened to him," Emma said, determination in her voice. Robert sighed heavily. "Just be careful. If someone did steal him, they broke the law. That makes them dangerous." Over the next week, Emma's dedicated care began to show results. Comet gained weight steadily. His coat, with daily brushing, started to regain some of its old shine. Though still wary of strangers, he grew increasingly comfortable with Emma, taking food from her hand and allowing her to touch areas that had previously made him flinch. One evening, as Emma sat on a stool outside Comet's stall making notes in her journal, her father approached with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing her a steaming mug. "Thanks, Dad." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching Comet eat his evening meal. "The auction is tomorrow," Robert finally said. "I've decided to pull the other horses from the sale." Emma looked up in surprise. "Really? But you said we need the money." "We do," Robert admitted. "But after seeing Comet, I can't risk our horses going to someone who might hurt them, not when we don't know who's out there buying." Emma felt a surge of pride in her father. "We'll find another way to raise the money." "I hope so," Robert said, his voice heavy with worry. "But right now, I'm more concerned about you. You haven't left this stable in over a week. You barely sleep." "I'm fine," Emma insisted. "You're obsessed," Robert corrected gently. "Just like your mother used to get when she was focused on something." Emma smiled slightly at the comparison to her mother. "I just want him to feel safe again." Robert looked at his daughter with concern. "I know, but you need to take care of yourself too." That night, Emma reluctantly agreed to sleep in her own bed in the house. She checked on Comet one last time, making sure his stall was clean and his water bucket full. "I'll be back first thing in the morning," she promised him. As she walked back to the house under a sky full of stars, Emma found herself wondering again how Comet had found his way back to Pinewood. Wolf Creek, where Miguel had first spotted him, was 20 miles away. Had he been wandering all that time? Or had someone dropped him there? The next morning, Emma woke early and hurried to the stable before breakfast. To her surprise, she found a new face at the ranch. A young man with dark hair and a confident smile was helping Miguel with the morning feed. "You must be Emma," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Jack Peterson. Your dad hired me last month to help with the training program." Emma shook his hand briefly, noticing he wore a black cowboy hat pushed back on his head. "Nice to meet you." She moved past him toward Comet's stall, feeling strangely uneasy. When she looked back, she found Jack staring at Comet with unusual interest. "That's the horse your dad found wandering, right?" Jack asked, walking over to the stall. "He's not just any horse," Emma said protectively. "His name is Comet. He belongs to our family." Jack's eyebrows rose. "Really? I thought he was a stray." He leaned against the stall door, studying Comet. "Interesting marks on him." As Jack moved closer, Comet backed away, his ears pinning flat against his head. Emma noticed how the horse's eyes never left Jack's cowboy hat. "He doesn't like strangers," Emma said, stepping between Jack and the stall, "especially men in hats." Jack smiled, removing his hat. No offense taken. He's been through something bad, I guess. He studied Comet with what seemed like professional interest. Looks like he might have been a racing horse at some point. Got the build for it. Emma frowned. He was never a racing horse. He was my mother's trail horse. Jack nodded, but something in his expression made Emma uncomfortable. Well, nice to meet you, Emma. I should get back to work. Your dad wants me to exercise the bay gelding this morning. As Jack walked away, Emma turned to Comet, who had visibly relaxed once the man was gone. You didn't like him, did you? She whispered. Later that afternoon, Emma heard the sound of a truck engine outside. Comet immediately tensed, but didn't panic as badly as before. Emma quickly moved to the stall window and saw Jack getting into a black pickup truck. He pulled out his phone and appeared to make a call, speaking animatedly though she couldn't hear his words. As the truck drove away, Emma stroked Comet's neck reassuringly. It's okay. He's gone now. But something about Jack Peterson bothered her. The way he had studied Comet. The way Comet had reacted to him. The phone call as he was leaving. Emma decided she would watch Jack Peterson very carefully from now on. Emma didn't sleep well that night. Jack Peterson's strange interest in Comet kept replaying in her mind. The way he had studied the horse, the phone call as he was leaving. By morning, she had made a decision. She would keep a close eye on the new ranch hand. After feeding Comet his breakfast, Emma approached her father, who was fixing a broken fence near the main barn. Dad, what do you know about Jack Peterson? She asked, trying to sound casual. Robert looked up from his work. Jack? He's been here about 3 months. Good with horses. Why do you ask? Just curious, Emma said. Where did he work before coming here? Robert wiped sweat from his forehead. Some ranch in Idaho, I think. Didn't ask for many details. We needed help and he came with decent references. Idaho, Emma repeated quietly. Is something wrong? Robert asked, noticing her expression. Emma hesitated. I'm not sure. Something about him makes Comet nervous. Robert put down his tools. Emma, lots of things make Comet nervous right now. He's been through something terrible. I know, Emma agreed. Maybe I'm being too protective. Robert smiled gently. You get that from your mother. She was the same way with her animals. Throughout the morning, Emma kept busy with Comet's care while watching Jack from a distance. He worked with the other horses skillfully, showing genuine experience. Nothing seemed out of place until mid-afternoon, when Emma went to the supply shed to get more vitamins for Comet. As she approached the shed, she heard Jack's voice from inside. Yeah, I'm sure it's him, Jack was saying in a low voice. Same markings. Star on the neck, white sock on the right front leg. Emma froze, staying just outside the door. No, they don't suspect anything, Jack continued. They think it's their long-lost horse that went missing in some flood years ago. Emma's heart pounded. She pressed herself against the wall of the shed, listening intently. I don't know how he got all the way up here, Jack said. Must have escaped during that transport. Yeah, it's definitely the same horse. Emma's hands trembled. Jack was talking about Comet. But why? To whom? The conversation ended abruptly. Emma quickly moved away from the shed and pretended to be checking a water trough when Jack emerged. He nodded at her casually and walked toward the main stable. Emma waited until he was out of sight, then hurried to find Miguel. The stable manager was in the tack room, cleaning saddles. Miguel, I need to ask you something important, Emma said, closing the door behind her. When you found Comet near Wolf Creek, was he wearing anything? A halter or any kind of identification? Miguel thought for a moment. No, nothing. Just rope marks on his legs, like he had broken free from something. And exactly when did you find him? About 5 weeks ago, Miguel answered. It was that Tuesday after the spring rain. Emma nodded, thinking. And when did Jack Peterson start working here? Miguel's eyebrows rose slightly. 3 months ago, maybe? Why all these questions, Emma? I'm trying to piece together what happened to Comet, she said carefully. Jack seems very interested in him. Miguel shrugged. He's a horse trainer, probably just professional curiosity. Emma wasn't convinced. That evening, after everyone had left the stables, she sat with her laptop in Comet's stall. The horse stood nearby, occasionally nudging her shoulder as she typed. Let's see what we can find out, she murmured, searching for news about stolen horses in Idaho. To her surprise, several articles appeared. One headline caught her attention: "Horse theft ring busted in southern Idaho." The article, dated 8 months ago, described how several valuable horses had been stolen from ranches across Idaho and neighboring states. Emma read further. Authorities believe the stolen horses were transported to illegal racing operations across the border in Mexico, where regulations on horse treatment are rarely enforced. Her stomach tightened. The article described how racing horses were often mistreated, kept in tiny stalls, underfed to keep them light for racing, and run until they broke down. Many suffered injuries similar to those Comet had. She found another article that mentioned how 2 horses had escaped during transport near the Montana border 6 months ago. They were never recovered. "Could that be you?" Emma whispered to Comet, who was watching her with his large eyes. "Did you escape and somehow find your way back to us?" The idea seemed impossible, yet Comet was here. And the timing matched. He could have wandered for months before being found near Wolf Creek. Emma was so absorbed in her research that she didn't hear footsteps approaching until they were right outside the stall. She quickly closed her laptop as Jack appeared at the door. "Working late?" he asked with a friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just checking on Comet," Emma replied, trying to sound normal. "What brings you back to the stables tonight?" "Forgot my phone in the tack room," Jack said. He peered at Comet with that same intense interest. "He's looking better. You've done good work with him." "Thanks," Emma said shortly. Jack lingered. "Mind if I take a closer look at him?" Professional interest. "I've worked with recovery cases before." Every instinct told Emma to refuse, but she couldn't think of a reasonable excuse. "Just for a minute. He gets nervous with strangers." Jack entered the stall slowly. Comet immediately backed into the corner, ears flat against his head. "Easy, boy," Jack said, his voice smooth. He studied the horse carefully, focusing on the star-shaped mark and the scars. Then, to Emma's shock, he pulled out his phone and quickly snapped several photos. "What are you doing?" Emma demanded. "Sorry," Jack said casually. "I like to document interesting cases, for learning purposes." Before Emma could respond, he thanked her and left the stall. She watched him walk away, her suspicion now a cold certainty. Something was very wrong with Jack Peterson. The next morning, Emma went to her father's office in the main house. Robert was sitting at his desk, surrounded by papers and looking tired. "Dad, we need to talk about Jack," she said, closing the door behind her. Robert looked up. "What about him?" "I don't trust him," Emma said plainly. "I heard him on the phone yesterday talking about Comet. He was telling someone that Comet is definitely the same horse, and last night he came to the stable just to take pictures of him." Robert frowned. "That does sound strange." "I did some research," Emma continued, showing her father the article she'd found. "There's been a ring of horse thieves operating in Idaho. They steal horses and sell them to illegal racing operations in Mexico." Robert read through the information, his frown deepening. "You think Comet was one of these stolen horses, and that Jack is connected to it?" "It fits," Emma insisted. "The timing, Comet's injuries, his fear of truck engines and men in cowboy hats. And why else would Jack be so interested in him?" Robert sighed heavily. "Emma, this is a serious accusation. We can't just—" A knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah poked her head in. "Robert, there's a call for you. It's the bank again." Robert's expression darkened. "I'll be right there." After Sarah left, he turned back to Emma. "We'll talk about this later. Right now, I need to handle this call." Emma watched her father leave, worry filling her chest. The bank calls were becoming more frequent. Later that afternoon, Emma was giving Comet fresh water when she noticed Jack's black truck parked at the far end of the property. He was standing beside it, on his phone again. This time, Emma was determined to hear what he was saying. She told Miguel she was going to check the fence line, then made her way toward Jack's truck, staying hidden behind outbuildings. When she got close enough, she crouched behind a stack of hay bales. "Worth at least $15,000, Jack was saying. "Probably more if he's really that horse from the championship in Texas." Emma's eyes widened. Championship? Comet had never competed in races or championships. "No, they're completely convinced it's their family pet," Jack continued with a laugh. "Some horse they lost in a flood years ago. They even have the same markings. Total coincidence." Emma felt sick. Jack was confirming everything she feared. "I'll keep an eye on him," Jack said before ending the call. We need to move carefully. The girl never leaves his side. Emma stayed hidden until Jack drove away. Her mind raced. If Comet wasn't their horse, why did he have the exact same markings? Why did he respond to his name? It couldn't be coincidence, unless Jack was lying to whoever was on the other end of that call. Emma hurried back to the stables and found her father brushing one of the mares. His face was grim. "Dad, I just heard Jack on the phone again," she began urgently. Robert held up his hand to stop her. "Emma, we have bigger problems right now. The bank called to set a final deadline. We have until the end of next month to pay what we owe, or they're foreclosing." "How much do we owe?" Emma asked, momentarily distracted from Jack. $25,000, Robert said, his voice flat. "We're 3 months behind on payments. I've tried everything, selling equipment, offering riding lessons, even looking for investors. Nothing's worked." Emma felt her chest tighten. "Dad, why didn't you tell me it was this bad?" "I didn't want to worry you while you were finishing school," Robert admitted. "I thought I could fix it." He sighed deeply. "Your mother always handled the business side. After she died, I made some bad decisions." Emma moved to hug her father. "We'll figure this out, Dad. We won't lose Pinewood." Robert hugged her back tightly. "I hope you're right, Emma. But right now, I don't see a way out." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Jack's phone calls, about Comet's injuries, and about the $25,000 they needed to save the ranch. Everything was connected somehow. She felt sure of it. But how? She got up and went to her desk, turning on her laptop. If Jack was involved with stolen horses, there had to be more information out there. As the screen lit up her small bedroom, Emma began searching again, determined to uncover the truth, both about Jack Peterson and about what had happened to Comet during those 3 lost years. Emma rubbed her tired eyes as the morning light filtered through her bedroom window. She had fallen asleep at her desk, her laptop still open to articles about horse theft rings. The information she found was troubling. Stories of valuable horses stolen across several states, many ending up in illegal racing operations in Mexico, where animal protection laws were rarely enforced. She quickly got dressed and hurried to the stable to check on Comet. The horse nickered softly when he saw her, a sound that made Emma smile despite her worries. His coat looked healthier each day, and he had gained weight under her careful feeding program. "Good morning, handsome," she said, offering him an apple. "You look better today." Miguel entered the stable, carrying feed buckets. "He's improving fast, Emma. You've done good work with him." "Thanks, Miguel. Have you seen Jack this morning?" "Not yet," Miguel replied. "Your father was looking for you. He's at the house." Emma gave Comet a final pat. "I'll be back soon, boy." At the house, Emma found her father sitting at the kitchen table with Sarah, both looking unusually tense. "Dad, everything okay?" Emma asked. Robert forced a smile. "Just talking about how to stretch our grocery budget this month. Sarah thinks we can grow more vegetables ourselves." Emma could tell there was more to the conversation. "Is it really that bad?" Robert sighed. "We're cutting corners wherever we can. It won't be enough, but we're trying." The sound of tires on gravel interrupted them. Through the kitchen window, Emma saw a large black truck pulling into the ranch driveway. The vehicle was expensive looking, with custom wheels and tinted windows. "Are we expecting visitors?" Emma asked. Robert looked confused. "No, not that I know of." They walked onto the front porch as a tall man in expensive cowboy boots stepped out of the truck. He wore a black cowboy hat and a leather jacket despite the warm day. His face was deeply tanned, with sharp features and cold eyes that assessed the property as he approached. "Robert Foster?" the man called out, his voice confident and smooth. "That's me," Robert replied. "Can I help you?" "Thomas Blackwood," the man said, extending his hand. "I own Blackwood Ranch down in Arizona. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Robert shook Blackwood's hand, looking confused. "I'm afraid I don't understand," Robert said. Blackwood smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "I'm looking for a horse, chestnut with a white marking on his neck and a white sock on his right front leg. I've been tracking him for months." Emma's breath caught in her throat. He was describing Comet. "What makes you think we have your horse?" she asked sharply. Blackwood turned his attention to Emma, studying her with interest. "And you are?" "My daughter Emma," Robert explained. "She's just finished veterinary school." "Well, and Emma," Blackwood said, "I received information that a horse matching my Storm's description was found in this area." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "I have all his papers right here." Robert took the folder, opening it to reveal registration documents and photos. Emma looked over his shoulder, her heart racing. The photo showed a horse that looked similar to Comet, but in the pictures the horse was healthier, more muscular. "This says you purchased this horse 2 years ago in Texas," Robert noted, reading the papers. "That's right," Blackwood confirmed. "Paid $35,000 for him. Champion Bloodlines." Emma frowned. "That's impossible. The horse we have is Comet. He belonged to my mother. He disappeared 3 years ago during a flood." Blackwood's smile remained fixed. "I understand it can be confusing. Horses can look similar, but the papers don't lie. If I could just see the animal, I can confirm if it's Storm." Robert hesitated, looking at Emma. She wanted to refuse, but knew they couldn't reasonably deny the man a chance to see if it was his horse. "Fine," she said coldly. "He's in the stable." As they walked toward the stable, Emma noticed Jack's truck parked near the equipment shed. Jack himself was nowhere to be seen. Inside the stable, Comet was in his stall, eating the fresh hay Miguel had provided. When he saw Emma, his head lifted, ears forward in greeting. Then his gaze shifted to Blackwood, and his entire demeanor changed instantly. Comet backed into the corner of his stall. His ears flattened against his head and his body began to tremble. The fear in his eyes was unmistakable. "That's him," Blackwood declared triumphantly. "That's my Storm." "He's terrified of you," Emma said, moving protectively toward the stall. "If he's your horse, why is he so afraid?" Blackwood's expression hardened slightly. "He's been through trauma, getting lost, surviving in the wild. It changes an animal." Emma stepped between Blackwood and the stall. "Our horse, Comet, had a star-shaped mark on his neck and a distinctive scar on his left back leg. This horse has both." "What a coincidence," Blackwood said smoothly. "Storm has similar markings. It's all in the papers." Robert studied the documents again, his brow furrowed. "These do look legitimate, Emma." Emma felt trapped. The papers looked real, but she knew in her heart this was Comet. The way he responded to his name, the way he remembered her and her father, his fear of Blackwood, it all added up. "If you don't mind," Blackwood said, "I'd like to take a closer look at him." Before Emma could object, Blackwood moved toward the stall. Comet's panic increased. He pressed himself against the back wall, his eyes wild with fear. "That's enough," Emma said firmly. "You're scaring him." Blackwood stepped back, his expression unreadable. "I can see he's been mistreated since he went missing. I'm willing to overlook that. What matters is getting him back where he belongs." Just then, Jack Peterson entered the stable. His steps faltered momentarily when he saw Blackwood, but he quickly recovered. "Morning, everyone," Jack said casually. Emma noticed something pass between Jack and Blackwood, a look of recognition quickly hidden. "Jack, this is Mr. Blackwood," Robert explained. "He believes our Comet might actually be his horse, Storm." "Is that right?" Jack said, feigning surprise. "Well, horses can look alike sometimes." Blackwood turned to Robert. "Mr. Foster, I understand this is difficult, but legally that horse belongs to me. I have the papers to prove it. I'm prepared to be reasonable about this." "Reasonable how?" Robert asked. "I know this area has been hit hard economically," Blackwood said. "I'm willing to offer compensation for your time caring for Storm, let's say $10,000. Emma saw her father's expression change at the mention of money. $10,000 wouldn't solve all their problems, but it would buy them time with the bank. "Dad, no," Emma said quietly. "This is Comet." "Emma, we need to discuss this," Robert replied, his voice strained. "Mr. Blackwood, can you give us some time to talk?" "Of course," Blackwood said smoothly. "I'm staying at the Golden Pine Motel in town. I'll come back tomorrow for your answer." He handed Robert a business card. "Call me if you decide sooner." As Blackwood left the stable, Emma noticed Jack slipping out behind him. She frowned, then turned to her father. "Dad, you can't be considering this," she pleaded. "That man is lying. This is Comet, I know it." Robert ran a hand through his gray hair. Emma, I want to believe that too. But his papers look real, and we need that money desperately. Then I'll prove it's Comet, Emma insisted. Give me until tomorrow. How will you prove it? Robert asked. I'll figure it out, Emma promised. Just don't agree to anything yet. After her father returned to the house, Emma rushed to the stable window. Outside, she could see Blackwood and Jack standing behind the equipment shed, talking intensely. They were too far away for her to hear their conversation, but their body language suggested familiarity. Emma quickly grabbed her phone and took several photos of the two men together. Her suspicions were confirmed. Jack and Blackwood knew each other. She spent the rest of the morning with Comet, her mind racing. How could she prove this was their horse? The papers Blackwood had shown looked authentic. If only Comet could talk and tell them what had happened to him. Around noon, Emma heard her father calling her name. She found him standing by the house, his face grim. Emma, we need to talk, he said quietly, leading her to the porch where they could speak privately. I just got off the phone with the bank. They've moved up our deadline. We have 2 weeks, not a month. 2 weeks? Emma repeated, stunned. That's impossible. Robert nodded sadly. They've already found a potential buyer for the property, some developer who wants to build vacation homes. He looked out over the ranch, the land his grandfather had settled, the home where Emma had grown up, the place her mother had loved. Emma, I don't see another way. We need that $10,000. So you're just going to give Comet to that man? Emma demanded, tears filling her eyes. Mom's horse? After we just got him back? I don't want to, Robert said, his voice breaking slightly. But sometimes we don't have choices, Emma. We have no proof that Blackwood is lying. His papers look legitimate. Emma wiped away tears. What if I can prove it? Will you wait until tomorrow before deciding? Robert studied his daughter's determined face, so much like her mother's had been. Okay, until tomorrow. But Emma, if you can't find concrete proof, we have to be realistic. I'll find proof, Emma promised. I know Blackwood is connected to Jack somehow, and I think they both know exactly what happened to Comet. That evening, Emma sat in Comet's stall, her laptop open as the horse dozed nearby. She studied the photos she had taken of Blackwood's papers, looking for any sign they might be fake. They appeared genuine, but something didn't add up. She pulled up her research on stolen horses again. One article mentioned how thieves sometimes altered microchip information to re-register stolen horses. Every registered horse had a microchip implanted under their skin for identification. That's it, Emma whispered to herself. She quickly dialed her phone. Dr. Williams? She said when her veterinary school professor answered. It's Emma Foster. I need your help with something urgent. As night fell over Pinewood Ranch, Emma finally had a plan. She would need help, but she was determined to prove Comet belonged to them and to uncover what role Jack Peterson and Thomas Blackwood had played in the horse's mysterious 3-year disappearance. Emma woke up before sunrise, her conversation with Dr. Williams still fresh in her mind. The veterinary professor had confirmed what Emma suspected. Microchip information could be altered, but there were ways to detect tampering. The original registration information is never completely erased, Dr. Williams had explained on the phone. With the right equipment, you can sometimes recover data from the first registration. Emma dressed quickly and headed to the stable. The early morning air was cool and quiet as she entered Comet's stall. The horse greeted her with a soft nicker. Morning, boy, she said, stroking his neck. Today we're going to prove who you really are. Emma checked her watch. Dr. Williams had promised to send detailed instructions by email about how to properly scan Comet's microchip. While waiting, Emma decided to try something else that had occurred to her during the night. Her mother, Catherine, had used special whistle patterns when calling Comet, a unique signal that was just between them. Emma hadn't tried it yet, unsure if it would stir painful memories for the horse. She took a deep breath and made the distinctive 3-note whistle, followed by 2 short ones, the exact pattern her mother had used countless times. Comet's reaction was immediate. His ears perked forward, and he turned to Emma with such recognition in his eyes that tears formed in her own. He walked directly to her and pressed his nose against her shoulder, something he had done with Catherine. You remember, Emma whispered, her voice breaking. You remember Mom's call. This was evidence, not the kind that would stand up in court, but evidence nonetheless that this horse was truly their Comet. No strange horse named Storm would respond to Catherine Foster's special whistle pattern. Emma heard footsteps and quickly wiped her eyes. Miguel appeared at the stall door. "You're here early," he said, then noticed her expression. "Is everything okay?" "Better than okay," Emma replied. "Miguel, I need a big favor. Can you keep Jack away from the stables this morning? Send him to fix the north pasture fence or something?" Miguel looked confused. "Why?" "I'm trying to prove Comet is really our horse before Dad sells him to Blackwood." Miguel's eyes widened. "Your father is considering selling him?" "We need the money," Emma explained. "But I know this is Comet, and I think Blackwood is lying. I just need time to prove it." Miguel nodded. "I'll keep Jack busy. Don't worry." After Miguel left, Emma checked her email. Dr. Williams had sent detailed instructions along with a warning. "Emma, if this horse was stolen and someone altered his microchip, you're dealing with serious criminals. Be careful and involve local authorities." Emma knew she needed more help. She scrolled through her phone contacts until she found the number she was looking for. David Chen. David had been 2 years ahead of Emma in high school. They'd stayed friends even after he joined the local police department. If anyone could help with the legal side of this situation, it would be David. She pressed call, hoping it wasn't too early. "Emma Foster," David answered warmly. "Haven't heard from you in ages. How's the veterinary doctor?" "Almost a doctor," Emma corrected. "David, I need your help with something important. It involves a stolen horse and possibly a criminal operation." There was a pause. "That sounds serious. Are you in trouble?" "Not yet," Emma said. "But I need someone with a badge and a microchip reader. Do you have time to come to Pinewood today?" "I'm off duty until 3 o'clock. I can be there in an hour. Should I be worried?" "Just be careful," Emma warned. "There's a new ranch hand here named Jack Peterson who I think is involved, and a man named Thomas Blackwood who claims our horse belongs to him." After hanging up, Emma went to the ranch office and began searching through old files. If they could find Comet's original registration papers, it would help prove their case. The office was cluttered with years of paperwork, much of it disorganized since her mother's death. Emma finally found a faded folder labeled Horse Registrations in her mother's handwriting. Inside were Comet's original papers, including his microchip registration from 12 years ago. The papers confirmed what Emma already knew. Comet had a star-shaped mark on his neck and a distinctive scar on his left hind leg, both identifying features of their horse currently in their stable. She was still examining the papers when she heard a car pull up. Through the window, she saw David's police cruiser, though he was in civilian clothes, jeans and a blue button-up shirt. Emma rushed out to meet him. "Thanks for coming," she said, giving him a quick hug. David Chen was tall, with short black hair and a serious expression that broke into a smile when he saw Emma. "Your message sounded urgent. What's going on?" Emma led him to a quiet spot behind the main house and explained everything: finding Comet, his condition, Jack's suspicious behavior, and Blackwood's sudden appearance with papers claiming the horse was his. David listened carefully, his expression growing more concerned. "This sounds like that horse theft ring we've been hearing about from Idaho. They steal valuable horses, alter their documentation, and sell them for racing in Mexico." "That's what I found in my research," Emma agreed. "Can your department's microchip scanner detect if the data has been altered?" David nodded. "Our new scanners can sometimes recover original registration information, even after tampering." He held up a small device he'd brought with him. "Let's take a look at your horse." In the stable, Comet was eating breakfast. He eyed David warily but stayed calm when Emma spoke soothingly to him. "The microchip is usually implanted on the left side of the neck," David explained. "I'll need to get close to scan it." Emma held Comet steady, stroking his face and talking quietly while David approached with the scanner. The horse tensed but allowed David to place the device against his neck. After a few seconds, the scanner beeped. David's eyebrows rose as he looked at the display. "Well, that's interesting," he said. "The current registration shows this horse belongs to Thomas Blackwood, purchased 2 years ago in Texas." He pressed a few buttons. "But there's definitely evidence of altered data. I can see fragments of an earlier registration." "Can you tell whose name was there before?" Emma asked eagerly. David shook his head. "Not from this device. We'd need the equipment at the station to recover that. But this is enough to raise serious questions about Blackwood's claim." Emma felt a surge of hope. So his papers could be fake? Or based on altered data, David confirmed. Either way, it's suspicious. He studied Emma's face. There's something else bothering you. What is it? Jack Peterson, Emma admitted. I saw him talking with Blackwood yesterday, even though they pretended not to know each other. And I've overheard Jack on the phone talking about Comet, saying he was definitely the same horse. David frowned. That doesn't sound good. Let me run a background check on both of them when I get back to the station. Just then, Emma heard the sound of a truck approaching. She peered out the stable window and saw Jack's vehicle. It's Jack, she whispered. Quick, put the scanner away. David pocketed the device just as Jack entered the stable. He stopped abruptly when he saw David. Morning, Jack said cautiously. Didn't know we had visitors. This is my friend David, Emma said, trying to sound casual. He was just stopping by to say hello. Jack's eyes moved from Emma to David, then to Comet. Miguel said you needed me at the north fence, but I forgot my tools here. No rush, Emma replied. We were just catching up. Jack nodded, grabbed a toolbox from a shelf, and left. But Emma noticed how he glanced back at them suspiciously. He's definitely nervous about something, David observed after Jack was gone. I'll look into him right away. They walked outside where they could talk more freely. Blackwood is coming back today for my father's answer, Emma explained. Dad's desperate for that money to save the ranch. How much trouble is the ranch in? David asked. We need $25,000 in 2 weeks or we lose everything, Emma said quietly. Blackwood is offering $10,000 for Comet. David whistled softly. That's a tough situation. He thought for a moment. Blackwood owns several properties, right? Do you know where? His card says Arizona, but I don't know much else about him. I'll check that too, David promised. If he's involved with illegal horse racing or trafficking, there might be reports or investigations already. Emma walked David to his car, grateful for his help. How soon can you get that information? I'll call you by this afternoon, David said. In the meantime, don't let your father agree to anything with Blackwood. And Emma? He looked at her seriously. Be careful around Jack. If he's involved in horse theft, he could be dangerous. After David left, Emma returned to Comet. The horse seemed calmer now, as if he sensed they were making progress. She sat on a stool beside his stall, thinking about everything they'd learned. The microchip had been tampered with, that was clear. But was it enough to convince her father not to sell Comet to Blackwood? And how would Blackwood react when challenged? Emma's phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Dr. Williams, who had been researching the articles Emma sent her about horse theft and illegal racing operations. These injuries you described are consistent with horses used in illegal racing, the email read. The marks on his legs suggest he was kept in a small space with restraints, common in makeshift racing stables. The saddle marks indicate improper equipment used for racing, not regular riding. Emma felt sick reading the confirmation of what she had suspected. Comet had been used for illegal racing, likely after being stolen. The thought of what he must have endured made her both sad and angry. She forwarded Dr. Williams's email to David, adding it to the growing evidence against Blackwood. Around noon, Emma heard a car on the driveway. Thinking it might be David returning, she looked out the window, only to see Blackwood's expensive black truck. He was back early, hours before they had agreed. Emma quickly texted her father. Blackwood is here. Don't agree to anything yet. I have evidence the papers are fake. She watched as Blackwood strode confidently toward the main house, where Robert was likely to be at this hour. Emma needed to get there before any decisions were made. But first, she took a moment with Comet. I won't let him take you, she promised the horse, who watched her with trusting eyes. Not again. As Emma hurried toward the house, her phone rang. It was David. Emma, I found something important, he said urgently. Blackwood owns 3 ranches along the Mexican border, and there's an ongoing investigation into possible illegal horse racing at one of them. And Jack Peterson? He worked at all 3 properties over the past 5 years. They are connected, Emma confirmed. Blackwood is here right now, trying to get my father to sell him Comet. I'm on my way back, David said, with a warrant to properly examine that microchip. Don't let them take the horse before I get there. Emma quickened her pace. She had to reach her father before he made a decision that would send Comet back to the people who had hurt him, and who might be breaking the law. The evidence was adding up. But would it be enough? And would she be in time to stop the sale? Emma burst through the front door of the house out of breath. She found her father and Blackwood sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out between them. "Dad, wait," Emma called. "Don't sign anything." Robert looked up, startled. "Emma, Mr. Blackwood came early to—" "I know exactly why he came early," Emma interrupted. "He's trying to pressure you before I can show you the evidence." Blackwood smiled smoothly. "Evidence of what exactly?" "That your papers are fake," Emma said firmly. "The microchip in the horse has been tampered with." Robert frowned. "What are you talking about?" "My friend David Chen from the police department scanned the chip this morning," Emma explained. "It shows signs of tampering, original data that was covered up with new information." Blackwood's smile faded slightly. "Police department? That seems excessive for a simple property dispute." "It's not simple," Emma countered. "And it's not just a dispute. I believe you stole Comet or bought him knowing he was stolen." Robert stood up, looking concerned. "Emma, these are serious accusations." "I know, Dad, but David is coming back with a warrant to properly examine the chip. He also told me there's an ongoing investigation into illegal horse racing at one of Mr. Blackwood's properties." Blackwood's expression hardened. "Young lady, you're making dangerous claims without proof. I came here in good faith with legitimate papers." "Then you won't mind waiting up for the police to verify those papers, will you?" Emma challenged. A tense silence filled the room. Robert looked between his daughter and Blackwood, clearly unsure who to believe. Blackwood finally spoke, his tone carefully controlled. "Mr. Foster, I understand your daughter is attached to this horse, but business is business. I'm offering $10,000, a generous amount for a horse in that condition. I suggest we complete this transaction now." Robert hesitated. "Perhaps we should wait for the police to—" "Dad," Emma interrupted. "David asked us to stall until he gets here. He thinks Blackwood and Jack Peterson are working together." "Jack?" Robert looked confused. "What does he have to do with this?" Before Emma could answer, her phone rang. It was David. "I'm 20 minutes away," he said when she answered. "Keep Blackwood there if you can. I've got a plan." Emma hung up and found both men staring at her. "That was David. He'll be here soon with the warrant." Blackwood stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I came here to make a fair deal, not to be accused of crimes. Mr. Foster, do we have an agreement or not?" Robert looked torn. Emma could see the worry in his eyes, worry about losing the ranch, about making the wrong decision. "Dad," Emma said gently, "remember what Mom always said about doing the right thing, even when it's hard?" Robert nodded slowly. "Let's wait for your friend, Emma. If the papers are legitimate, we can still make a deal." Blackwood's jaw tightened, but he sat back down. "Fine, but I won't wait all day." The next 20 minutes were painfully tense. Sarah brought coffee, which Blackwood declined. Emma texted David updates while keeping a careful eye on Blackwood. When David finally arrived, he wasn't alone. Another officer accompanied him, a woman in uniform. "Mr. Foster, Emma," David greeted them. He nodded to Blackwood. "Mr. Blackwood, I presume?" "What is this about, officer?" Blackwood demanded. David held up an official document. "I have a warrant to examine the microchip of the horse in question to determine if it has been tampered with. This is Officer Lisa Martinez. She'll be assisting me." Blackwood stood. "This is harassment. I have legal papers proving ownership." "Then you have nothing to worry about," David replied calmly. "Shall we go to the stable?" As they walked, David fell in step beside Emma and whispered, "We're going to set a trap. Play along." At the stable, Comet was waiting in his stall. When he saw the group approaching, he moved nervously, especially when he spotted Blackwood. "He's still scared of you," Emma pointed out. Strange reaction to his supposed owner. "He's been through trauma," Blackwood repeated his earlier explanation. David approached the stall with his scanner. "We need to properly check this microchip. Our preliminary scan showed irregularities." As David worked, Emma noticed Jack Peterson watching from outside the stable. His expression was worried, and he kept looking at Blackwood for some signal. After several minutes, David looked up from his scanner. "Well, this is interesting. According to the original data, which was partially overwritten, this horse was registered to Catherine Foster 12 years ago." "That's impossible," Blackwood snapped. "Check again." "I've checked 3 times," David replied. "There's clear evidence of tampering with the microchip data. Someone tried to erase the original information and replace it with new registration. Emma felt a surge of triumph. So the papers are fake? Not necessarily fake, David explained. The horse could have been re-registered after being sold, but combined with the ongoing investigation into Mr. Blackwood's racing operations, it raises serious questions. Blackwood's face darkened. What investigation? This is the first I'm hearing of it. Really? David said skeptically. The Arizona Gaming Commission and Animal Welfare Division have been looking into reports of illegal horse racing at your property near the Mexican border for months. Emma watched Blackwood carefully. His confident demeanor was cracking slightly. David continued, Mr. Foster, I believe we need to sort this out properly. In the meantime, the horse should stay here. Robert nodded, looking relieved. Blackwood, however, was clearly angry. This is absurd, he insisted. I have legitimate papers, which may have been created based on altered microchip data, David countered. He turned to Robert. Mr. Foster, would you be willing to cooperate in a more thorough investigation? Of course, Robert replied. David then looked at Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood, to clear this up, would you be willing to answer some questions about how you acquired this horse? Blackwood hesitated. I've already explained everything. I purchased him in Texas 2 years ago. From whom? David pressed. A private seller, Blackwood said vaguely. I have the bill of sale in my truck. We'd like to see that, David said. As Blackwood left to retrieve the document, David quickly turned to Emma and Robert. We need to get him talking, he whispered. I have a recording device. If we can get him to admit anything about stolen horses or illegal racing, we'll have him. How? Robert asked. Pretend you're still considering selling, David suggested. Emma, you act upset but resigned. Ask questions about where he'll take Comet and what he'll use him for. Try to get him talking about racing. Emma nodded, understanding the plan. I can do that. Officer Martinez positioned herself near the stable entrance, keeping an eye out for Jack. When Blackwood returned with more papers, David examined them briefly. These appear to be in order, but we'll need to verify them. This is a waste of time, Blackwood complained. Mr. Foster, are you selling the horse or not? Robert glanced at David, then said carefully, If your papers are legitimate, I suppose I have no choice, but I'd need the money today. Blackwood relaxed slightly. I can arrange that. I have a trailer outside. We can complete the transaction now. Where will you take him? Emma asked, pretending to be resigned but concerned. He's been through so much already. Back to Arizona, Blackwood replied. I have excellent facilities there. Will you race him? Emma pressed. He has old racing injuries. That's what our vet said. Blackwood's eyes narrowed slightly. What kind of injuries? The kind that come from being raced too hard, too young, Emma said, on tracks that aren't properly maintained. There was a moment of tension as Blackwood seemed to consider his response carefully. Then he smiled. I assure you, my racing facilities are top-notch. So you do race horses? David asked casually. Legally, yes, Blackwood confirmed. Quarter horse racing is big business in Arizona. Emma noticed Jack hovering near the stable entrance, looking increasingly nervous. She needed to push harder. Those scars on his legs, Emma said. Our vet said they're from being tied with ropes. Is that how you keep horses at your facility? Blackwood's smile disappeared. You don't know what you're talking about. I think I do, Emma countered. I think Comet was stolen 3 years ago and ended up in your racing operation. I think he was mistreated and escaped. And I think you recognized him when Jack told you he was here. That's enough, Blackwood snapped. He turned to Robert. Do we have a deal or not? Robert looked at David, who gave a small nod. Yes, Robert said slowly. We have a deal. $10,000 cash. Blackwood seemed to relax. Good decision. I'll get the money from my truck. As Blackwood stepped outside, David quickly moved to Robert and Emma. Good work. I got some of that on tape, but we need more. He's being careful. What now? Emma asked. Keep pushing about the racing, David instructed. Ask specific questions about Mexico. When Blackwood returned with an envelope of cash, Emma couldn't contain herself any longer. Why was Comet so scared of truck engines? She demanded. Why does he panic when he sees men in cowboy hats? What did you do to him at those racing tracks in Mexico? Blackwood froze. Mexico? I never mentioned Mexico. You didn't have to, Emma said. The marks on his body tell the story. Illegal racing, mistreatment, cruelty. You should control your daughter, Foster, Blackwood said coldly to Robert. Answer her questions, Robert replied, standing beside Emma. If your papers are legitimate, you have nothing to hide. Blackwood's composed facade cracked. You have no idea who you're dealing with. That horse is valuable, worth far more than the $10,000 I offered. He won 3 major races before he disappeared during transport. Transport where? David asked sharply. Blackwood realized his mistake too late. That's not what I meant. You just admitted you knew about his racing history, Emma pointed out. How would you know that if you just bought him from a private seller in Texas? Suddenly, smoke began billowing from the back of the stable. Officer Martinez shouted, "Fire!" In the confusion that followed, Blackwood grabbed Comet's halter from a hook and rushed toward his stall. Jack appeared from nowhere, opening the stall door. Comet reared up in panic as Blackwood tried to force the halter onto him. "Stop!" Emma shouted, running toward them. David rushed to help, but Jack blocked his path. Outside, they could hear the sound of Blackwood's truck engine starting. Someone else was involved. The fire, which was small and contained to a hay bale, created enough smoke and confusion for Blackwood to get a lead rope on Comet. The terrified horse fought against him, but Blackwood was strong and determined. "Get out of my way," Blackwood growled at Emma, who stood between him and the stable exit. "This horse is mine, and I'm taking him." Emma stood her ground, even as Comet pulled and struggled against Blackwood's grip. "You'll have to go through me first. I'll move you myself if I have to," Blackwood threatened, taking a step toward Emma. Before he could reach her, Comet reared up violently. His front hooves slashed through the air as he fought against Blackwood's grip. The powerful motion yanked the lead rope from Blackwood's hand. Free from restraint, Comet bolted past Emma, past David, who was still struggling with Jack, and out the stable door into the open ranch yard. "Comet!" Emma shouted, immediately running after him. Behind her, chaos erupted. Officer Martinez was putting out the small hay fire with an extinguisher. David had managed to overpower Jack and was pressing him up against the wall. Robert was blocking Blackwood from following Emma. "You're not going anywhere," Robert said firmly to Blackwood, "except with the police." Outside, Emma spotted Comet galloping across the main pasture toward the distant tree line that marked the beginning of the forest. His movements were panicked, his head high, his tail flagged in fear. "Comet, stop!" Emma called, knowing it was futile. The horse was too frightened to listen. She ran to a truck, jumped in, and followed the fence line, hoping to cut him off before he reached the trees. But Comet was too fast, even in his weakened state. By the time Emma reached the edge of the property, Comet had disappeared into the forest. Emma stopped her truck and got out, staring at the dark line of trees. The sky above had grown dark with heavy clouds. A storm was coming. The weather forecast had predicted rain, but the rapidly darkening sky suggested something more severe. "Emma!" David's voice called from behind her. He was jogging toward her truck, leaving his police cruiser back at the stable. "Wait!" Emma turned toward him. "I have to find him, David. He's terrified." David reached her, slightly out of breath. "Jack is in custody. We found a gun in his truck and evidence linking him to the horse theft ring. Blackwood is being questioned by Officer Martinez." "I don't care about them right now," Emma said, looking back at the forest. "I need to find Comet before he hurts himself or gets too far away." David frowned at the darkening sky. "A storm's coming in. It could be dangerous out there." "I know these woods," Emma insisted. "I've been riding through them my whole life." "At least wait for backup," David pleaded. "We can organize a proper search party." Emma shook her head. "There's no time. Comet is still weak and scared. He could get hurt or lost." She began grabbing supplies from her truck. A flashlight, a rope, her rain jacket. "Tell my dad what happened. I'll keep my phone on." David looked like he wanted to argue more, but nodded reluctantly. "Be careful. Call for help if you need it." Emma headed into the forest, following the obvious trail Comet had left. Broken branches, disturbed ground, and occasional hoof prints in the soft earth. The first drops of rain began to fall as she entered the trees. Back at the stable, Robert watched as Officer Martinez questioned Blackwood. The businessman's confident demeanor had cracked, but he still maintained his innocence. "This is a misunderstanding," Blackwood insisted. "I purchased that horse legally." "Then why did you try to take him by force?" Officer Martinez asked. "I was protecting my property," Blackwood said defensively. Robert interrupted. My daughter has gone after Comet. There's a storm coming. David returned, slightly breathless. Emma's gone into the forest after the horse. I couldn't stop her. Robert's face paled. We need to go after her. A big storm is moving in fast. I've called for backup, David assured him. They'll help search once they arrive. In the meantime, we need to secure these two. He nodded toward Blackwood and Jack, who was handcuffed in the police cruiser. You'll regret this, Blackwood threatened. My lawyers will have me out within hours. David ignored him, turning to Robert. Which way would the horse likely go? Robert thought for a moment. Emma thinks he was found near Wolf Creek. He might head back that way. It's about 5 miles east through the forest. Let's organize a search party, David decided, and get some vehicles to Wolf Creek in case he shows up there. As they began planning the search, the sky opened up. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, and lightning flashed in the distance. In the forest, Emma was already soaked. The rain made it difficult to follow Comet's trail, washing away hoofprints and making the ground slippery. She called his name repeatedly, hoping he would respond to her voice as he had in the stable. Comet, it's me, Emma, she shouted over the increasingly loud rainfall. The forest grew darker as the storm intensified. Emma clicked on her flashlight, grateful she'd grabbed it from her truck. Lightning flashed overhead, followed almost immediately by a crack of thunder that shook the ground. Emma remembered how storms had always terrified Comet, even as a young horse. She pushed forward, following what tracks she could still see. The trail seemed to be heading east, toward Wolf Creek, the place where Miguel had found Comet wandering weeks ago. Is that where you're going, boy? Emma said aloud, though there was no one to hear. Back to where you were found? The rain grew heavier, and the wind picked up, bending the trees around her. Emma knew she should seek shelter, but the thought of Comet alone and frightened pushed her onward. After an hour of difficult travel, Emma realized with growing concern that she wasn't entirely sure of her location anymore. The storm had disoriented her, and the landmarks she knew so well looked different in the heavy rain and dim light. She pulled out her phone to check her GPS, but the signal was weak. Before she could get a clear reading, the device slipped from her wet hands and fell into a puddle. Though she quickly retrieved it, the screen remained black. Great, Emma muttered, putting the useless phone in her pocket. She stood still for a moment, trying to get her bearings. Wolf Creek should be to the east, but which way was east now? The heavy cloud cover hid the sun completely. Emma chose a direction and continued walking, calling for Comet every few minutes. The forest floor grew increasingly treacherous, with mud and debris creating a slippery path. Twice she nearly fell, catching herself against tree trunks. Comet, she called again, her voice growing hoarse. Comet, where are you? Only the sound of rain and thunder answered her. Back at the ranch, the search party had assembled. Robert, Miguel, and 3 other ranch hands, plus David and 2 additional police officers who had arrived. They split into teams, each taking different sections of the forest. The creek will be rising fast with this rain, Robert warned everyone. Be careful near the water. David handed out walkie-talkies. Stay in communication. If anyone finds Emma or the horse, call it in immediately. As the teams headed out into the storm, Robert turned to David. 3 years ago, we lost Comet during a storm just like this. The creek flooded and we thought he drowned. He looked at the dark sky. I can't lose my daughter the same way. We'll find her, David promised, though concern was clear in his voice. In the forest, Emma was completely soaked and increasingly cold. The rain showed no signs of letting up, and the wind had grown stronger, howling through the trees. Lightning flashed more frequently now, making the forest briefly bright as day before plunging back into darkness. She stumbled down a muddy slope, losing her footing. This time she couldn't catch herself and fell hard, sliding several feet through mud and wet leaves. Pain shot through her ankle as she tried to stand. No, 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 Emma muttered, testing her weight on the injured ankle. It hurt, but she could still walk, though barely. She picked up her flashlight, which had fallen during her slide, and continued moving forward with a noticeable limp. The terrain grew steeper as she descended toward what she hoped was Wolf Creek. If Comet was heading back to where he had been found, that's where he would go. Another flash of lightning revealed a clearing ahead. Emma moved toward it, hoping for a better view of her surroundings. As she broke through the trees, she found herself on a high bank overlooking the creek, except it no longer looked like a creek. The normally gentle stream had become a rushing river, swollen with rainwater. Emma's heart sank. If Comet had come this way, he might have been caught in the rising water. She shone her flashlight along the bank, looking for any sign of the horse. "Comet," she called, her voice barely audible over the roar of the water and the crash of thunder. She moved carefully along the muddy bank, searching. The rain continued to pour, making visibility poor even with the flashlight. Emma was about to turn away and try a different direction when another lightning flash illuminated the landscape. There, on the opposite bank, stood a horse, head down against the rain, body trembling. "Comet!" Emma shouted, relief flooding through her. The horse's head came up at the sound of her voice. Even from across the churning water, Emma could see it was indeed Comet. He nickered, a sound she couldn't hear but could recognize from the motion. "Stay there, boy," Emma called, though she knew he couldn't understand. "I'm coming to you." She looked up and down the bank, searching for a way across. The usual shallow crossing points were completely underwater. The creek was now at least 20 feet wide, with a powerful current that could easily sweep her away. Emma's injured ankle throbbed as she limped along the bank, looking for any possible crossing. She found a fallen tree that extended partway across the water, but not all the way. It was a desperate option, but perhaps the only one. She carefully climbed onto the wet trunk, balancing as best she could. The wood was slippery, and her injured ankle made keeping her balance even harder. Inch by inch, she moved forward, using her arms for balance. When she reached the end of the fallen tree, she was still about 6 feet from the opposite bank. Comet watched her from the other side, ears forward, clearly recognizing her despite the rain and darkness. "I'm going to have to jump," Emma said to herself, gauging the distance. With her injured ankle, it would be risky, but she couldn't see another option. Just as she prepared to leap, there was a loud crack. The section of tree trunk she was standing on broke away from the main trunk. Emma felt herself falling, then the shocking cold of the water as she plunged into the swollen creek. The current immediately grabbed her, pulling her downstream. Emma fought to keep her head above water, gasping for breath. Her hands reached desperately for anything to grab onto, but the bank slipped past too quickly. "Help!" she screamed, though she knew no one could hear her over the storm. As she was swept around a bend, Emma managed to grab onto a branch extending into the water. She pulled herself toward the bank, fighting against the current. With enormous effort, she dragged herself onto the muddy shore, coughing and gasping. For several minutes, Emma simply lay there, too exhausted to move. The rain continued to pound down around her. She had no idea where she was or how far the creek had carried her. Her flashlight was gone, lost in the water. When she finally found the strength to sit up, Emma realized she was on the same side of the creek as Comet had been, but the horse was nowhere in sight. "Comet," she called weakly, her voice barely audible even to herself. She forced herself to stand, wincing at the pain in her ankle, which was now much worse after her fall. Using a broken branch as a makeshift crutch, Emma began limping along the bank, heading back upstream where she had last seen Comet. The night had grown even darker, and without her flashlight, Emma could barely see a few feet ahead. Only the occasional lightning flashes provided brief glimpses of her surroundings. "Comet!" she tried calling again, louder this time. To her surprise, she heard a soft nicker in response. Emma turned toward the sound, peering through the rain. Another flash of lightning revealed Comet standing just a few yards away, watching her intently. "You found me," Emma whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her face. Emma limped toward Comet, hardly believing her eyes. The horse stood completely still, allowing her to approach. His coat was soaked, his body shivering from the cold and fear. When Emma reached him, she placed a gentle hand on his wet neck. "You waited for me," she whispered. Comet lowered his head, pressing it against Emma's shoulder in a gesture that she remembered from years before. Despite everything he had been through, the fear, the mistreatment, the chase, he had stayed instead of running away. Lightning flashed again, followed by an immediate crack of thunder. Comet trembled but didn't bolt. Emma knew they needed to find shelter. The storm was directly overhead now, and they were both soaked and cold. Her ankle throbbed with each heartbeat, and she could barely put weight on it. "We need to find someplace dry," she told Comet, holding onto his mane for support. "Can you help me walk, boy?" As if understanding, Comet stayed close beside her as Emma began to move away from the dangerous creek. The water was still rising, the banks becoming increasingly unstable. Each step was painful, but with Comet beside her, Emma could use his solid presence for balance. They moved slowly through the dark forest, Emma using her branch as a walking stick and Comet as support. The rain continued to pour, making the ground treacherous. Emma tried to head uphill, away from the flood-prone areas, but the slope was slippery with mud. "Careful," she said to both herself and Comet as they navigated the difficult terrain. After walking for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Emma's injured ankle finally gave out. She slipped on the wet ground and fell hard, crying out in pain. Comet stopped immediately, standing over her as she lay in the mud. "I can't," Emma gasped, the pain overwhelming. "I can't walk anymore." She tried to stand again but couldn't put any weight on her ankle. The cold and exhaustion were taking their toll, and Emma felt a wave of hopelessness wash over her. They were lost in the forest during a major storm. She was injured, and no one knew where to find them. Comet nudged her shoulder gently. Then, to Emma's surprise, the horse carefully lowered himself to the ground beside her, lying down in the mud. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, though she knew the horse couldn't answer. Comet remained still, looking at her expectantly. Emma suddenly understood. He was offering her a way to move. With tremendous effort, she pulled herself onto Comet's back as he lay there. Once she was positioned, Comet slowly stood up, lifting Emma with him. "Smart boy," Emma whispered, leaning forward to hold onto his mane. "Let's find shelter." Comet began walking carefully through the forest, choosing his path with surprising precision considering the darkness. Emma could do nothing but hold on and trust him. Her ankle hurt too much to guide him, and she was starting to feel lightheaded from the pain and cold. The horse seemed to know where he was going. He moved with purpose, heading further uphill where the ground became rockier and more stable. After several minutes of careful navigation, Comet stopped beneath a large rock outcropping that formed a natural shelter. The space underneath was mostly dry, protected from the rain by the overhanging rock. Emma slid from Comet's back, unable to stand on her own. She crawled into the sheltered space, grateful for any protection from the relentless downpour. To her relief, Comet followed, squeezing his large body into the small, dry area beside her. "You're amazing," Emma told him, her voice weak. "You found us shelter." The rock outcropping wasn't large, just enough space for Emma to sit with her back against the stone wall and Comet to stand beside her, his body blocking much of the wind and rain that blew in from the open side. The ground was rocky but dry, a welcome change from the mud and water they had been traveling through. Emma checked her ankle in the dim light. It was swollen to nearly twice its normal size, and even the slightest touch caused sharp pain. She knew she wouldn't be walking out of the forest on her own. "We'll have to wait for morning," she told Comet, "or for someone to find us." The thought of her father and the others searching in this storm made Emma's chest tighten with worry. Would they even know where to look? The forest was huge, and the storm would have washed away any tracks she and Comet had left. Emma's wet clothes clung to her body, making her shiver uncontrollably. The temperature had dropped with the storm, and now that she was no longer moving, the cold began to seep into her bones. Her teeth chattered as she tried to rub warmth into her arms. Comet watched her for a moment, then shifted his position. He carefully lowered himself to the ground again, lying down beside Emma in the small space. His large body radiated warmth, and he positioned himself so that Emma was sheltered between his body and the rock wall. Emma leaned against Comet's side, grateful for his warmth. "Thank you," she whispered. Outside their small shelter, the storm continued to rage. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the forest in stark white light before plunging it back into darkness. The thunder seemed to shake the very ground. But inside their rocky shelter, Emma felt strangely safe with Comet beside her. "I remember when you used to be afraid of storms," Emma told him, her voice soft. "Mom would sit with you in the stable all night." She smiled at the memory. "Now you're the brave one." Comet's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. His breathing was steady and calm despite the chaos outside. "I wonder how you ended up at Wolf Creek," Emma continued, talking as much to keep herself awake as to comfort the horse. "Did you escape from Blackwood? Did you run all the way from Arizona or Mexico?" The horse couldn't answer, of course, but Emma found comfort in asking the questions aloud. She stroked Comet's neck, noticing that despite the rain and mud, she could still see the star-shaped mark that had identified him as their long-lost horse. "You found your way home," Emma murmured. "After 3 years, you found your way back to us. How did you do that?" The pain in her ankle was still intense, but the warmth from Comet's body was helping Emma feel less cold. She knew they were far from safe. They were still lost in the forest during a dangerous storm, and her injury was serious. But for the moment, they had shelter, and they were together. "They'll find us in the morning," Emma said, trying to convince herself as much as comfort Comet. "Dad and David won't give up looking." As the night wore on, the storm began to move away. The lightning became less frequent, the thunder more distant. The rain continued to fall, but less violently than before. Emma fought to stay awake, worried about the cold and her injury. She knew sleeping could be dangerous in her condition, but exhaustion was taking over. "I just need to rest for a minute," she told Comet, her eyes growing heavy. Despite her best efforts, Emma drifted into an uneasy sleep, her head resting against Comet's shoulder. The horse remained alert, his ears moving at every sound from the forest. He stayed completely still, allowing Emma to sleep against him. Throughout the night, Comet adjusted his position slightly whenever Emma shivered, moving to better block the occasional gusts of wind that blew into their shelter. His body remained a constant source of warmth against the cold night air. Dawn arrived with a gentle lightening of the sky visible through the trees. The rain had finally stopped, though water still dripped from leaves and branches. Birds began to call tentatively, signaling the storm had passed. Emma woke to the sound of Comet shifting position. Her clothes were still damp, and her ankle throbbed painfully, but she had survived the night. She sat up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her body. "Morning already," she said hoarsely. "We made it through the night, Comet." The horse stood up carefully, shaking himself once he was clear of Emma. He looked surprisingly alert despite the difficult night. Emma, on the other hand, felt terrible. Her ankle had swollen even more overnight, and she felt lightheaded and weak. "I don't think I can walk," she admitted to Comet, "and I don't know where we are." The forest looked different in the early morning light. The storm had changed the landscape, with fallen branches and new streams created by the heavy rain. Emma had no idea which direction would lead them home, or how far they had traveled during the night. "Hello," she called out, hoping someone might be searching nearby. "Can anybody hear me?" Her voice sounded weak, even to her own ears. It was unlikely anyone would hear her unless they were very close. Emma tried to stand, using the rock wall for support, but her injured ankle gave way immediately. She slumped back to the ground, fighting back tears of pain and frustration. Comet watched her, then moved to stand directly beside her. Like the night before, he carefully lowered himself to the ground. "You want to carry me again?" Emma asked, understanding his intention. "But which way should we go?" She looked around, trying to orient herself. The rising sun provided some direction, east, but that didn't tell her which way led to Pinewood Ranch. If they went the wrong way, they could end up even more lost in the vast forest. Comet seemed impatient, waiting for her to climb onto his back. Emma realized she had little choice. Staying put might be safer, but no one knew where they were. They could wait for days before being found. "Okay," she decided. "I'll trust you." With great effort, Emma pulled herself onto Comet's back. The horse stood up carefully, making sure Emma was secure before starting to walk. To her surprise, Comet set off with confidence, choosing a path through the trees without hesitation. "You know the way home?" Emma asked, holding tightly to his mane. Comet continued walking steadily, picking his way through the wet forest. Emma noticed he was avoiding the downhill paths that would lead back to the flooded creek. Instead, he followed a route that stayed on higher ground, moving generally westward by Emma's estimation. The forest was peaceful after the storm. Sunlight filtered through the trees, and the only sounds were birdsong and the occasional drip of water from the leaves. Under different circumstances, Emma might have enjoyed the beauty of it. Now she focused only on holding on to Comet and hoping he truly knew the way home. "Dad must be so worried," Emma said aloud. "And we never got to finish proving Blackwood was lying about you." Comet's ears twitched at the mention of Blackwood's name, but he continued walking steadily. Emma realized the horse was taking care to move smoothly, minimizing the jarring of her injured ankle. As they traveled, Emma thought she heard distant voices calling. She strained to listen, unsure if it was real or just her hopeful imagination. "Hello!" she shouted as loudly as she could. "We're here! Help!" Comet stopped, his ears forward. He let out a loud whinny that echoed through the forest. a sound that would carry much further than Emma's weakened voice. There was a moment of silence, then an answering shout. "Emma, is that you?" It was her father's voice, distant but unmistakable. Emma felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Dad, we're here," she called back. Comet whinnied again as if understanding the need to guide the searchers to their location. The voices grew louder as Comet continued to whinny. Emma clung to his back, hope rising in her chest. Through the trees, she could see movement, people in bright jackets pushing through the underbrush toward them. "Emma!" Robert shouted as he emerged from between two large trees. His face was haggard with worry, his clothes soaked and muddy. When he saw Emma on Comet's back, he broke into a run. "Dad!" Emma called, relief flooding through her. David Chen appeared behind Robert, along with Miguel and two other search team members. All of them looked exhausted, as if they had been searching all night. "Thank God," Robert said, reaching Comet and Emma. "We've been looking everywhere for you." David approached quickly. "Are you hurt?" "My ankle," Emma explained. "I fell near the creek. I can't walk on it." Robert carefully helped Emma down from Comet's back. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she winced in pain and would have fallen if her father hadn't caught her. "We need to get you to a doctor," Robert said, examining her swollen ankle. "How did you find us?" Emma asked. "We've been searching all night," David explained. "When the storm let up at dawn, we split into groups and covered as much ground as we could. We were about to check near Wolf Creek when we heard Comet." Miguel approached Comet, patting his neck gently. "This horse is a hero. Look at him. He protected you all night." Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. "He saved me, Dad. He found shelter for us and kept me warm. He even lay down so I could get on his back when I couldn't walk." Robert looked at Comet with new respect. After everything he's been through, he still had the heart to help you. One of the search team members spoke into a radio, informing the other groups that Emma had been found. David called for medical assistance. "We have paramedics waiting at the forest edge," he told Emma. "They'll meet us part way." "I'm not leaving Comet," Emma insisted. "He can walk beside us," Robert assured her. "But we need to get you out of here now." Robert and David fashioned a makeshift stretcher using jackets and sturdy branches. They carefully placed Emma on it, mindful of her injured ankle. As they prepared to carry her out, Emma reached for Comet. "Come on, boy," she called. "We're going home." Comet followed closely as the men carried Emma through the forest. Miguel walked beside the horse, occasionally checking to make sure he was okay. Despite his own exhaustion, Comet stayed near Emma, watching her protectively. At the edge of the forest, an ambulance was waiting. Paramedics quickly assessed Emma's condition. "Definitely a severe sprain, possibly a hairline fracture," one paramedic said after examining her ankle. "We need to get you to the hospital for x-rays." "What about Comet?" Emma asked, unwilling to be separated from the horse. "I'll bring him back to the ranch," Miguel promised. "Don't worry about him." As the paramedics prepared to load Emma into the ambulance, David approached. "I have some news," he said. "Blackwood is in custody. After you ran after Comet, he tried to flee, but Officer Martinez stopped him. When they searched his truck, they found more falsified horse papers and evidence connecting him to illegal racing operations in Mexico." "So I was right," Emma said, feeling vindicated despite her pain. "More than right," David confirmed. "Jack Peterson has already confessed. He worked for Blackwood's racing operation and recognized Comet as one of their escaped horses. He called Blackwood as soon as he realized who Comet was." "What will happen to them?" Robert asked. "They're facing multiple charges: horse theft, animal cruelty, falsifying documents, and crossing state lines with stolen animals. It's a federal case now," David explained. "The FBI has been tracking this operation for months. Your situation with Comet might help them break open the entire ring." Emma smiled weakly, the pain in her ankle making it hard to concentrate. "Good. They deserve it after what they did to Comet, and who knows how many other horses." The paramedics finished securing her ankle and prepared to move her into the ambulance. Robert promised to follow in his truck. Before they closed the ambulance doors, Emma called out to Comet one last time. "See you at home, brave boy," she said. The horse watched as the ambulance doors closed, his eyes never leaving Emma. At the hospital, X-rays confirmed Emma had a hairline fracture in her ankle, along with severe spraining of the ligaments. The doctor wrapped it securely and provided crutches, instructing her to stay off it for at least 3 weeks. "You're lucky," Dr. Patterson told her. "If you'd been out in those conditions much longer, It could have been much worse. I wasn't alone, Emma said. Comet stayed with me. By late afternoon, Emma was back at Pinewood Ranch, settled on the living room couch with her ankle elevated. Robert brought her regular updates on Comet, who was resting comfortably in his stall after being checked by a local veterinarian. He's tired but healthy, Robert reported. Dr. Wilson says it's remarkable how well he's doing after everything he's been through. 2 days later, David visited the ranch with more news. He found Emma sitting on a chair outside Comet's stall, her crutches leaning against the wall. "How's the ankle?" he asked. "Painful," Emma admitted, "but worth it. How's the case against Blackwood going?" David smiled. "That's why I'm here. His operation has been completely shut down. The FBI raided his property in Arizona and found 27 horses, all in poor condition, many of them stolen. They've been tracking his operation for almost a year but couldn't get enough evidence until now." "What about the microchip tampering?" Emma asked. "That was the key evidence," David confirmed. "Once they confirmed Comet's chip had been altered, they got warrants for everything else. Blackwood's facing years in prison." Emma reached out to stroke Comet's nose as he poked his head over the stall door. "Did they figure out how he got from Arizona or Mexico all the way to Wolf Creek?" David nodded. Jack confessed that about 6 months ago they were transporting several horses from an illegal race in Mexico to Blackwood's ranch in Arizona. There was an accident on a back road in southern Montana. 2 horses escaped, including Comet, or Champion as they called him. They searched but couldn't find him. "So he wandered for months before Miguel found him," Emma mused. "Somehow, he made his way back to this area," David said. "The FBI agent I spoke with said it's not unheard of for horses to travel incredible distances to return to places they know." The next morning, Emma was surprised to see a reporter from the Bridger County Gazette at the ranch. The young woman, Melissa Turner, wanted to write a story about Comet's remarkable journey and his rescue of Emma during the storm. "People love animal stories with happy endings," Melissa explained as she took notes, "especially ones with heroes like Comet." Emma shared the story of finding Comet, discovering his true identity, and how he had protected her during the storm. She also talked about Blackwood's illegal operation and the suffering Comet had endured. "He's not just any horse," Emma told the reporter. "He belonged to my mother before she died. Finding him again feels like getting a piece of her back." The story appeared in the newspaper 3 days later. "The Strange Horse That No One Wanted, A Tale of Homecoming and Heroism." The article detailed Comet's disappearance 3 years ago, his likely capture by horse thieves, his escape, and his eventual return to Pinewood Ranch. It emphasized how the horse everyone had rejected at auction turned out to be a long-lost beloved family horse, and ultimately a hero who saved Emma's life. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Phone calls and emails poured in from people touched by Comet's story. Local television stations picked up the story, and a video of Emma sitting with the Comet while describing their night in the forest went viral online. 1 week after the storm, Robert called Emma to his office. She hobbled in on her crutches, finding her father sitting at his desk with an unusual smile on his face. "What is it, Dad?" Emma asked, lowering herself into a chair. "You won't believe what's happened," Robert said, his voice filled with amazement. "People have been sending donations to help save the ranch. After that newspaper story, it just exploded." He pushed a bank statement toward Emma. She gasped when she saw the total. $32,000? She read in disbelief. "In 1 week?" Robert nodded. "From all over the state and beyond. Some are small amounts from regular people. Others are larger donations from horse lovers with deep pockets. But that's not all." He handed Emma a letter with a local veterinary clinic's letterhead. "Dr. Wilson wants to partner with us," Robert explained. "He proposes we use part of the ranch as a rehabilitation center for rescued horses. He says your work with Comet proves you have the skills they need." Emma read the letter, her heart racing. "A rehabilitation center? Here?" "He thinks your veterinary training and your obvious talent for helping traumatized horses would make this the perfect place," Robert said. "The clinic would provide funding and medical support. What do you think?" Emma felt tears in her eyes. "I think it's perfect, Dad. It's exactly what I want to do." In the following weeks, as Emma's ankle healed, Plans for the Pinewood Horse Rehabilitation Center took shape. The donations continued to come in, allowing Robert to pay off the bank debt entirely and begin renovations on the Old West stable to create specialized recovery stalls. Emma worked closely with Dr. Wilson, designing protocols for physical and psychological rehabilitation of abused and neglected horses. Her experience with Comet provided valuable insights into how to help horses overcome trauma. Comet himself continued to improve daily. His coat regained its rich chestnut shine, and his eyes lost their haunted look. He gained weight and muscle tone. The only lasting signs of his ordeal were a few permanent scars and his continued wariness around men wearing cowboy hats. 1 month after the storm, Emma stood in the pasture watching Comet run freely with 2 other horses. Her ankle was almost fully healed, though she still walked with a slight limp. David stood beside her, admiring the transformation in the horse. "Hard to believe that's the same animal no one wanted at auction," he remarked. "He just needed someone to see past the dirt and fear," Emma said, "to see who he really was underneath." In the sunlight, the star-shaped mark on Comet's neck stood out clearly against his shining coat. Emma had decided to keep it visible, refusing to let his mane grow long enough to cover it. "That mark helped us identify him," she explained to David. "Now it reminds me that sometimes the things we lose find their way back to us when we need them most." Robert joined them at the fence, watching Comet with pride. "The first 2 rescued horses arrive tomorrow," he said. "The rehab center is officially opening." Emma smiled. "I can't think of a better way to honor Mom's memory, or Comet's journey home." As if hearing his name, Comet stopped running and looked toward them. Then, to the surprise of both David and Robert, the horse trotted directly to Emma, lowered his head, and gently nudged her shoulder, exactly as he used to do with Catherine. "He remembers everything now," Emma said softly, stroking his nose. "He's finally all the way home."